Hello guys. Uh so for the ones that watch me for exjw, um I have been following this a little bit here and there, but today I actually just decided to go ahead and look into it. Just to really see what the hell is actually going on. Because I feel like in more than one way, uh, they're probably going to try to weasel their way out of this, and I suspect that that's already what is happening. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about the Norway Supreme Court hearing and everything that's kind of led up to this, really. I mean, I think I know that these are two different countries, but I think that Sweden denying them aid was a ginormous step in the right direction, you know. So I'm gonna click here um, for the price we pay Norway Supreme Court hearing. Um, Mind you, I'm not really interested in playing the video. Please don't play the video. Um, Mind you that whatever they're saying, so if you're just stumbling in on this and you don't know about Jehovah's Witnesses, they are a worldwide organization. Well, they're worldwide cult disguised as an organization. And the reason why I use the word cult is because of how hard they try to hide the damage they do to other people. Because it's not something that is very fun to go through at all. And, well, it says it right up here, revealing secrets, because there's no excuse for secrecy in God's true religion. And that's what they coined themselves as being the only true religion of God. So from February, I'm just going to read this down here. From February 5th through February 9th, the Supreme Court of Norway, I don't know how to say this word, will hear a landmark case involving Jehovah's Witnesses in the Norwegian state, focusing on how religious freedom is balanced against human rights protections, especially for children. Avoidjw was permitted by the Supreme Court Communications to host a live stream on our homepage, and W Supreme Court for that, honestly. But the reason why I bring into it worldwide, and this is only in Norway, is because Jehovah's Witnesses believe the same thing no matter where they are. So, for instance, like what it says up here, where human rights protections, especially for children, and focusing on how freedom of religion is balanced against human rights protection. So basically what this means is, even if it's illegal for something to happen in that country, wherever it is, say for instance shunning is something that is looked at by a lot of countries as being a inhumane thing to do to another human. This is what Jehovah's Witnesses being believed should be done, or taught that should be done to people who do not want their faith. So also, I used to be a Jehovah's Witness for 20 something years. I have I've seen it from afar, and I've felt it from inside. The harm that these people do with their laws to other people is inhumane. It really is. Okay. What is the Supreme Court hearing on? A long anticipated moment has arrived. Norway Supreme Court is now set to hear the Jehovah's Witnesses challenge the state's decision to withdraw public funding. Oh no! Watchtower is losing money because they're a shitty organization. A case that could redefine the boundaries between religion, autonomy, and government accountability. The case is not merely about subsidies or bureaucratic compliance. It cuts to the core of how democratic societies balance freedom of belief against the protection of individual rights, especially when internal religious practices collide with modern human rights standards. Once again, mentioning the shunning. And I like that they bring out the children, because Jehovah's Witnesses think that shunning should apply to children as well. And it's a really good way to fuck up a child's life, you know? It's a really good way. The court's weigh theology against law. Norway's decision may set a precedent with ripple effects far beyond its borders. Let's hope it does. Regarding information and exposure, a mass post of information regards this topic was posted on the exjw subreddit with avoidjw's account. Within minutes through, though, the account was banned until we figure out how to get the account active. Oh, that's not good. Posts for other advocates on the exjw subreddit are available, including side posts. Okay. So what will the Supreme Court decide? How the law should be interpreted, the limits of the state's discretion, the balance between religious autonomy and individual rights, especially children's rights, and whether the Court of Appeal applied the legal standards, and how Religious Communities Act something 6 should be understood and applied. And of course, as you all know, with Brumley, even though that was a case here in America, Jehovah's Witness lawyers are not above lying, because that really speaks volumes when you're talking about God's true religion, you know. This is something that I have looked forward to for quite some time. And I have been hoping that these countries will continue to fight this in the way that they are with the courts, because of a simple thing, that if they are going to claim that they worship the same way all over the world, then when these things get set in court, I'm wondering if they are going to change it all over the world to stop the harm that they are doing to people, adults and children. Doesn't matter. So this was day one. I'm gonna read some of this. Day one, Norway Supreme Court hearing opens with statement, arguments. Gab Gabrielson sets the frame. Okay. So, religious autonomy certainly helps to ensure the individual's freedom of religion, but it undermines the protection of rights in the convention if members do not have a real opportunity to leave the community. And this is so true because as soon as one you know kids kids grow up, people get tired of doing the same shit over and over and over again. People sometimes like to explore. Me, I consider myself an explorer. I'm a pagan. I consider myself a pagan, a practicing pagan witch, and I decided that I wanted to leave, and there was no easy way to go about it. And it's the same way for so many others, that there's no easy way to go about it, especially if you're one of the ones that was molested in the Jehovah's Witnesses as a child. And the reason why it says a real opportunity, or sorry, do not have a real opportunity to leave the community, is because when you talk about leaving, not only do they bombard you, being if you decide that you want to leave, not only do they bombard you with a 3v1 in a I don't even know what their word for it is now. It used to be called a judicial hearing or whatever. But they also threaten you if your family's in there, that your family will not speak to you, they will shun you, they will act as if you are dead. And that's how people that want to leave the Jehovah's Witnesses, whether they were born into it or whether they got into it a little bit earlier in life and they decide that it's not for them, this is something that they're punished with. And also, if you are, I just want to go ahead and say this, at least here in America, there are laws that say if you are under 18 and you get baptized in a group like the Jehovah's Witnesses, you're really in a way not bound to your baptism thing that they make you do, because they, oh, you were baptized, you're forever one of God's servants, you can't leave, and you're going back on your word, you're setting yourself up for failure for generations, the same shit that they always tell you. That's a thing that they use to try and control people so they don't leave. And it's such a shitty concept that a place of love would do this to anyone. I think that sends more waves of that there's no love here, and that's why it's set up in this way. So I'm gonna zoom in some. Supreme Court House, Norway, day 1, open with state's arguments, presented first. Settling the legal frame, the Supreme Court will examine throughout the week in the Second Division courtroom, 8:30 a.m. Reports from former Jehovah's Witness presents said the Supreme Court courtroom was already packed with press and Jehovah's Witnesses. The state opened its case. Who has been the government's attorney for the case. The hearing goes on until, so we still got, Monday. So Monday, the hearing will be over with. So from the start, Liv's argument wasn't just about subsidies. It was about a boundary, the difference between religious freedom and the individual's freedom to opt out without coercion. Religious freedom doesn't include trapping people inside. And this is something that has been argued for decades, that for somehow they haven't, I don't know how they haven't been caught on this yet, but it's something that they do. They trap people inside because well, you want to leave, you love your family. Well, your family is going to think you're a piece of shit. They're not going to talk to you. They're not going to treat you like you are a human, and that is God's judgment. Bullshit it is. Live, acknowledge the religious communities have autonomy, but not autonomy without limits under European Convention on Human Rights. She argued the the foundational unit isn't the organizations, it's the person. The individual is the individual is the basic unit within the European Convention on Human Rights, is what this stands for. Autonomy is protected only because it serves individual freedom. The autonomy of religious communities should ensure the religious freedom of its members. Then came the line that effectively summarized the state's posture for the entire day. Religious autonomy certainly helps to ensure the individual's freedom of religion, but it undermines the protection of rights of the convention if members do not have a real opportunity to leave the community. Liv's position was explicit. Some people can't leave because of absolute obstacles, and the state argues that there must be limits on the kinds of obstacles a religious community is allowed to impose. There are limits to what kind of obstacles a religious community can place on people who want to leave. And that's something that they don't, for some reason, it just does not register to Jehovah's Witnesses, to their, to the 8 men that they follow, that people have rights, and those rights cannot be imposed upon without consequences. And if this goes the right way, and I hope that it does, there will be a lot of consequences for Watchtower in the future, because one of the things that they thrive on is fear, capturing people by fear. Well, you won't be able to speak to your family. You'll be all alone. You won't have anything for yourself because it'll all be in here. And that is something that I've been told by leaders in the congregation, and it doesn't matter if you're someone who is sexually molested or someone that they have decided to target as a child so they can keep them in the truth. You got to keep those kids in the truth, right? Yeah. So it's not these are the things that they try to do to young members, to literally keep them there, to make sure that they don't leave. And if they try to leave, then they have the whole power of God to punish you with. No, it doesn't work that way. It does not work that way. Funding is conditional. Norway's law spells out why. Example for violations that may provide grounds for refusing subsidies, including negative social control against children, psychological violence. Watchtower loves their psychological violence. Let me tell you what, buddy. Forced participation, and gender-based restrictions. Watchtower loves these too. The State Acres case in Norway, Religious Communities Act, emphasizing the registration and subsidies are privileges, not prerequisites for religious life. Registration is not a condition for calling oneself a religious community or for activities as a religious community. Well, Watchtower thinks that everyone should fund them because they're just the greatest organization on earth, and they were put here by God. And oh my goodness, this is Satan's work that their money is getting threatened. The state's point, Jehovah's Witnesses can practice freely regardless, but government funding is conditional and can be denied if the group's practices violate rights. Wow, that's a sentence I bet they have a hard time reading. Liv laid out the types of conduct that can justify denying subsidies. Example of violations may provide grounds for refusing subsidies include negative social control against children, psychological violence, enforced participation, and gender-based restriction. And I'm guessing what they mean by forced participation is literally all of the children on a Saturday being trafficked to the Kingdom Hall to go out in service. Okay, that's what forced participation is, or all the children that they get after the convention to clean up the convention center. Okay, that to me is what forced participation would be, and it is human trafficking. I don't care what the hell you want to call it. You're taking a bunch of people, you're putting them in a building, and you're telling them afterward, do our work for us, or you're a bad servant of God. She emphasized that the legal test is not about proving intent. It is about effect, especially on children. It is enough that the effect is directed at children. Of course. Liv also clarified that the law is not limited to child-related harms. Various forms of negative social control can also fall under this. The concern is not only children. She drew a line between adults choosing to follow rules and coercion that crosses into right violations. If adult members are of their own free will follow such rules, they cannot necessarily be perceived as violations under this provision. But she immediately added that the provision can still capture communities that prevent exit or violate vulnerability. The condition can also affect communities that prevent girls from leaving or that exploit the fact that a member is in a vulnerable position due to disability, illness, or age. I gotta tell you, Watchtower loves the people in vulnerable positions. They really do. Because those are the people that need Jehovah's love the most, right? It's not just something expressed on paper. It is something they do. It is a teaching that is followed and practiced. Liv repeatedly replied on the Court of Appeals finding on Jehovah's Witnesses shunning practices, emphasizing that the lower court concluded that treatment of excluded members closely follows the organization's own written doctrine. The practice toward excluded persons is essentially in line with what is described in Jehovah's Witnesses' own text. She stressed that this was not merely theoretical. Isn't it something that that whenever this is up against, Watchtower, no, we don't do that. We don't do that at all. Meanwhile, just go read like any type of Watchtower, and like hell, even in the like 2010 era, like yeah, they do that a lot. They say it in their own literature. And what's worse is a kid that doesn't know anything about life is brought up being taught to do that to other people. Being taught to treat other people that way. It is absolutely disgusting. This is not something expressed on paper, she says. This is something they do. It is a teaching that is followed and practiced. The state rejected comparisons to other religious community, arguing that it is not aware of any other group that applies such a systematic and formalized form of shunning, while Jehovah's Witnesses have pointed to individual members who maintain limited contact with former members. Liv said those examples do not reflect the official practices. No, they don't. For instance, before they were being looked at by Norway the first time, they got in trouble for their practices, and I think they also got in trouble for them in Australia as well. On top of all the the pedophilia that they found going on in the organization in Australia. And what I mean by that, like, what I'm picturing in my head when she says that it doesn't reflect the official practice is you would be in the hall. There would be these people that would come in during the song, and they would leave right after the prayer because they cannot talk to them. And if they saw Jehovah's Witness and an ex-Jehovah's Witness talking, they would punish the Jehovah's Witness that was talking to the ex-Jehovah's Witness, even outside of the congregation, outside of the property of the congregation. Doesn't have to be near it, doesn't have to be in a place that Watchtower owns. They make sure that their doctrine follows people into the bedroom, and they mean that for like every situation in life, because this is how Watchtower wants their people to be for some reason, just inhumane. When it comes to other people leaving the organization, because I think the way that they see it is that you have been taught, quote unquote, God's rules, you broke them, so now you're less than a human because you knew better, but you broke them anyway. And that's not how life works. That is not how life works. Freedom of religion does not have to mean that your whole family is cut off to you. That is disgusting and barbaric. Liv said those examples do not reflect the official practice. It does not change the fact that the religious community teaches that contact should be kept at an absolute minimum. She also dismissed descriptions of the practice as mild social distancing. This is gonna be their new word that they use for how to treat disfellowshipped ones. Mild social distancing. You know, you gotta treat them with a little bit of mild COVID-19. You know, this is not about mild social distancing. This is about being shut out. This is about your aunts, your uncles, your cousins, grandma, grandpa, or hell, even mom and dad, brother and sister, not wanting to talk to you anymore because you found out that you believe something else, and this is a life for you. Not being in one of Jehovah's Witnesses is a life for you. You found that out. You were brave enough to go live it, and you were brave enough to go and do it. And now Watchtower is going to shove their foot on your neck for doing it. People have committed suicide over this, and they want to call it mild social distancing. Fuck you, Watchtower. According to the state, the practice is clearly attributable to Jehovah's Witnesses as a religious community, with rules set out in its own text, formally announced to congregations, and reformed through eternal sanctions for those who do not comply. Baptism, entry into membership, happens young, sometimes very young. For me, I think I was 12. I was 12 when I was baptized in Jehovah's Witnesses, and I was 8 when I became an unbaptized publisher. And between 8 and 12, I was molested in the church of Jehovah's Witnesses, like literally in the church. The state argued that JW membership is not merely a private identity. It is entered through baptism, and that baptism often occurs during adolescence, with examples. By the way, just going forward in your life, it could be anyone. Something going forward in your life. If you are around a place that tries to get people before they turn 18 to make a life decision, the place is probably predatory. Just a notion I want to mention. If you are in a place and the place tries to get people to do something that they want them committed for their whole life to do, and they are under 18, they are under the age of an adult, the place is probably predatory. It is entered through baptism, and that baptism often occurs during adolescence, with examples and evidence even younger. Liv noted that the Court of Appeals described baptism as typically occurring around 8 through 15, but also cited evidence of baptism at 11 and emphasized there is no lower age limit. Bullshit, there is in Watchtower. I'm saying this because the 2014 through 2018, some of those broadcastings, they would have little kids. I mean, little kids, probably like 7, 8 years old, had them start thinking about getting baptized so they can give their whole life to Watchtower. It's disgusting to read that they don't look for younger people to get baptized when they absolutely do. She then read from the Watchtower article used to show how the organization communicates baptism to minors. You can be like King David. The Bible says nothing about having to be an adult. Someone who is young can still understand what is right. Yeah. Just like how someone who is young can be tricked to go into a back room with 3 men and get molested. Yeah, sure. Sure, Watchtower, sure. And young people who love Jehovah and understand what it means to dedicate themselves do not hesitate to be baptized. No, they don't. Because from the day that they pop out of their fucking mom, if they're born into the truth, they're over there. The only thing they're getting fed is get baptized, get baptized, get baptized. Oh, you're not going to get baptized? Oh, well, you're going to die. You're going to lose your whole family. God doesn't love you. There's nothing that can be done if you walk out there into Satan's world. Right now, you're in the protection of Jehovah. Get baptized to seal yourself in his protection. The amount of manipulation that they put into their literature and then they go and try and say, I mean, I still even feel like that 15 years old is too young. 15 years old is too young. It really is. Because nobody knows what that person is going to want to do. That person doesn't know what they're going to want to do by the time they're 25. Oh, wait. Yeah, I do. They're going to be working at some factory because Jehovah's Witnesses told them to not go to college and not look for a career because the whole world is ending anyway. Uh, Liv's implications were clear. Baptism is treated as a mature commitment, but is encouraged early, while the consequences, including exclusion and shunning, may apply. Sorry, not may apply to minors as well as adults. Um, so I don't know. Uh, you like this sounds absolutely predatory to me. It sounds absolutely predatory. Um Hold on. I need a drink. Shunning, social distancing versus what it really is. Wow. They are actually going to start using this word in their literature, I bet. The wording social distancing is, in the state's view, misleading. Absolutely, it's misleading. A major moment was Liv critique of the Court of Appeals wording. The court used a phrase equivalent to social distancing to describe how members treat excommunicated people. Liv argued that the term is misleading, too sanitized, too pandemic coded, and not reflective of the actual social reality. The wording social distancing is, in the state's view, misleading. She explained that in English language literature, the concepts are clear. Disfellowshipping describes the action from the community side, while shunning describes what the remaining members do. She expressed that the more accurate framing is avoidance shunning, not casual distance. And it is avoidance shunning, because I cannot tell you, as from coming from the inside over the years and seeing how people that are shunned are treated, and that how like members will sit there in their own little private groups and literally make fun and mock the people that are shunned. It is ridiculous. And then they have the gall to go out and call themselves God's loving community. Bull fucking shit, you are. The main rule, avoid them with narrow exceptions. Live walk through the Court of Appeals description. The general rule is to avoid excluded or resigned members, with exceptions for those in the same household and for necessary family matters. But she also highlighted the enforcement mechanism. If members violate shunning exceptions, they can themselves face discipline. Yeah, they'll make sure that they also get shunned. Oh, what is it? Uh, it doesn't matter. Is that your son you're shunning? Is that your dad, your mom, your grandpa, your grandma, your aunt, your uncle? Well, thank you for being a good little Jehovah's Witness. God is proud of you for shunning. That's the shit that I was told when I was in there. Uh, from JW Publications, she quoted, "We have no spiritual or social fellowship with excluded persons." Now, something that I have been told since I was a little kid is that you cannot have any spiritual conversation, but you could socialize a little bit. However, if you do it too much, then you're going out into the world. Or the other way that I've heard it, you can't talk to them about spiritual things, but if they need some service done, hey, go make that money. So apparently God's rules only matter when if there's money involved. You know, we have no spiritual or social fellowship with the excluded persons. And the warning, just saying hi to someone can develop into a whole conversation and maybe even a friendship. But they're not treating the people inhumane. Fuck you, Watchtower. Then she tied it directly to the Elders' Manual, Shepherd the Flock, the book that Jehovah's Witnesses fear that people know about. You can't read that book. Only our God-appointed elders can. She tied the Elders' Manual, Shepherd the Flock, where unnecessary association can be treated as shameless conduct. Unnecessary association with excluded ones or those who have withdrawn are crucially and crucially she read the line showing how this can escalate. A judicial committee shall not be set aside unless there is a permanent spiritual fellowship or persistent open criticism of the decision. The state's point, this is not informal social drift. This is a structured practice with consequences. Absolutely it is. It's designed to make a person feel like that they're not even a person. Liv told the court there is no direct European Court of Human Rights case defending what counts as a violation of rights to leave a religion. There is no judgment that directly concerns what would constitute an interference or a violation of the right to leave a religious community. So she argued the Supreme Court must reason from adjacent case law, especially cases where people were effectively compelled to remain members of organizations or trade unions, and where the courts asked whether opt-out was truly possible in practice. No, it's not. It's not possible with them because they're a fucking cult. Her key principle, what matters is not what is true in theory, but an assessment of the actual situation when leaving. This is what needs to be analyzed globally for Jehovah's Witnesses. This is what truly needs to be analyzed globally. That becomes central when leaving costs a person, their family, network, social world, and practical support. Some people, it costs them their jobs because you're told that you should stay around other witnesses your whole life. So you try and you build a career around other witnesses, and then you decide that really this isn't working out for you, and you've seen some things over the years that you're not really too cool with, so you decide to leave, and oh well, you don't have a job now. You cannot support yourself now because you were taught all your life to stay around witnesses. It's so fucking barbaric how predatory they are. It's disgusting. 3 important points address the state's errors and claim. Mistake 1, the court appeal underestimated how much resignation, exclusion, changes, contact, even within the household, and no spiritual fellowship, meaning no shared religious life at home. Exactly. And that's one thing that's always bothered me, because as a Jehovah's Witness, you're kind of taught that you should learn about other religions. But if there's someone in your family that has moved on from being a Jehovah's Witness and gone to another thing, you're not allowed to talk to them about their religion. But at the same time, they're also made to feel like that they should, every now and then flaunt their literature, flaunt their no blood card out at you, just to remind you of the good old days. Mistake two, the Court of Appeal underestimated how much registration, exclusion, changes, contact with family outside the household when necessary family matters is a narrow exception. I mean, they my family doesn't even want to like eat with me, so I can't. I haven't eaten with my family in fucking years. They don't want to, that this is just a standard for how the average Jehovah's Witness, that's especially the ones that's been in for, uh, uh, 40 plus years, have been taught to live their life. This person is not a person of God, so you cannot eat with them. Mistake three, the Court of Appeal wrongly assumed that contact with people outside the religion, the rest of society, meaningfully reduces the harm of losing family and friends inside the religion. I've argued that for the typical JW, most of their network is internal, so the dampening effect of outside contact is minimal. Yeah, you're taught that Satan's world is bad. Everyone outside the world has a bad, or everybody outside of Jehovah's organization in the world has a bad intent for you, and everyone is out to get you now because you left Jehovah's organization, and you don't have those friends around you that kept you running on that hamster wheel, constantly going in a circle and getting nowhere your whole life. You no longer have that around you, so you don't know where else the fuck to go or what to do. I mean, that this is another reason for why Jehovah's Witnesses are a cult, because trying to build your outside circle outside of Jehovah's Witnesses is because you're constantly being judged with your conduct, your character, your dress, who you hang out with. You're constantly being watched and judged because of that. And it's such a fucking sick thing. Let's see. Let me continue to read. A key moment in the state's presentation came when Liv addressed point 33, the Court of Appeals ruling titled The Experience of Lost Contact. The section, she argued, captures the real impact of Jehovah's Witnesses withdrawal practices, although much of the evidence describes exclusion. Liv stressed that this is not a distinction with legal significance. They are treated in the same way. Whether a member is excluded or withdraws voluntarily, the consequence is the same. Loss of family, loss of friends, and loss of one's social world. This, Liv noted, is also central to the assessment of children's rights, since children are subject to the same practices under different labels. Yep. Narrow exceptions don't change the outcome. Jehovah's Witnesses point an exception allowing limited contact within the household or in necessarily family matters. But Liv said these exceptions do little to change reality. There are no big exceptions. They do not weigh for this to a very large extent. For most members, she explained, nearly all meaningful relationships exist inside the religious community. The actual situation that you have little to go on when you face this choice, whether to stay or quit. And like the biggest thing when it comes to this is that people will go back for their family because it is actual mental torture to just sit there and be alone when you've done nothing wrong. You have done nothing wrong and you're being punished for it. Forced dilemma. Liv framed the decision forcing baptized members in stark terms. If you're a baptized member and no longer believe you have, if you are a baptized member and you no longer believe, you have two choices. Either you leave or the consequence of is loss of family and friends, or you stay without the possibility of living in line with your own convictions. Exactly. Like, so basically, if you stay, but you believe in something different, you don't have a life then. You don't have a life. You cannot be you. You're trapped in something that you didn't believe in the first place, and there's nowhere for you to go. People's circumstances differ. She acknowledged that the pressure mechanism is the same. Choose family relationships and social networks are for many strong means of pressure. Exactly. I mean, I'm just going to go ahead and be real. I don't really miss anyone that I used to hang out with because most of the people that I called friends in there were assholes anyway. So fuck them. But, I just, it does hurt a lot when you know that a family member is dying and they won't tell you anything because you're not one of Jehovah's Witnesses anymore. That comes from something that personally happened to me. Family friendships and psychological harm. Liv reminded the court that family life is a legally protected interest. Family is fundamental in a person's life, and that's why family life is protected under the Constitution's in Article 8 of ECHR. Leaving also means losing friendships, relationships that shape identity and that provide meaning and resilience. To illustrate the impact, Liv cited research published on pastoral psychology on former Jehovah's Witnesses, study on an ostracism show that social exclusion caused severe psychological harm. Ostracism threatens four fundamental social needs: belonging, self-esteem, control, and meaningful existence. Research on former witnesses in several European countries found that for around 1/6 of participants, leaving the community led to breakdown of a core relationship, such as a marriage, event strongly linked to poor health outcomes. Absolutely, and Watchtower just endorses this. They just endorse this. They just feed off of it. Like, if you don't do what we say, then you're gonna be psychologically fucked up. Fuck you, Watchtower. Years spent unable to leave. Witness testimony reinforced this picture. One formal member described wanting to leave for 7 to 8 years, but remaining inactive instead to avoid being cut off. A lot of people do this. A lot of people do this because of how they are. Because, um, you know, uh, it's a cult. They're all boxed into their little kingdom hall. Everybody knows everybody. Everybody knows where everyone shops. Everybody knows where everyone goes to have fun at, and everybody knows what everyone does because they're all taught to watch each other. So if they're doing something bad, they can go report it to the elders. Um, so people do this so they don't have to put up with other bullshit that other assholes in there want to do because they don't have anything better to do with their life. Um, but remaining inactive instead of being cut off, I didn't quit because of the cost it entails. I didn't want to be an outcast. Another said the fear of losing family, friends, housing, and work left him completely locked inside the community. Lev emphasized that the absence of people who were absolutely unable to leave does not weaken the state's case. It does not require absolute obstacles. A practice can still be suited to prevent withdrawal. No real flexibility. Finally, Liv addressed claims that the members are free to follow their conscience. Let me tell you something. Free to follow their conscience should be met with the absolute, like, it should just be met in the meaning of just how, like, for instance, pretend that this free to follow their conscience had like zero opacity on it, so you can't see it and it just blends back into the page. That's their free to follow their conscience, because their only thing that they know how to do is follow what someone else tells them to do. And it's really sad. She pointed to testimony from Jeffrey Jackson, a member of Jehovah's Witnesses governing body, acknowledged that there is no room for flexibility in the rooms of shunning. You can, well, of course, this is fucking Jeffrey Jackson. Isn't he the fuck that went over there to Australia and was like, no, we didn't know that all this pedophilia was happening in our own congregations? Oh, wow. Jehovah must have forgot to tell us about that. Fucking idiot, man. Acknowledge that there is no room for flexibility on the rules of shunning. You can call it conscience, but there's a clear exemption. A clear expectation to comply. The state's conclusion was direct. You can consent to many things within a religious community, but you are not protected against conditions that prevent withdrawal. Consent cannot legitimize the practice. Independent grounds, children's right. The state argued that the case does not rightly solely. Sorry, I did not read that right. The state argued that the case does not rest solely on the rights to withdraw, even if court were to disagree on the point. Liv said the denial of subsidies is still justified because the practices conflict with children's rights, particularly the right to protect from psychological violence and negative social control. Liv rejected the idea that these protections are limited only to the UN Convention on Rights of the Child. There's nothing in the wording or the preparatory work that supports such a limitation. She pointed out to Article 19 of the convention, which obligates states to protect children from all forms of physical and psychological violence, regardless of intent or frequency. According to the state, intentional guidance makes clear that psychological harm does not require repeated or extreme acts to qualify. Well, it's nice to know that it doesn't require repeated or extreme acts to qualify as psychological harm. And you know something? The thing is that Watchtower is more scared of losing their funding than they are of the generational impact that doing this to people is going to have in the future. They're more scared of losing money than they are protecting the children in there. The Court of Appeals on Live argued that set the bar too high by requiring persistent pattern of mistreatment similar to criminal law thresholds. Frequency, severity, and intent are not prerequisites for something to constitute psychological violence. And, you know, the psychological violence that it has on a child, that if you don't sit there and study your Watchtower, then your family isn't going to be able to love you, or God isn't going to love you because you didn't study. Like, I don't know how many times that was used on me as a child. Practice applies to minors. Finally, Liv addressed claims that minors are rarely affected. She noted that Jehovah's Witnesses themselves acknowledge that at least one minor has been excluded in Norway at the time of the subsidy appeal, and the updated internal guidelines still allow for minors to be removed from the congregation. What matters, she says, is not how often exclusion occurs, but what the practice is suited to do. It's suited to scare the shit out of children and make sure that they're always one of Jehovah's Witnesses. That's what it's suited to do. I mean, the decisive questions is how the practice works and what harm is it likely to cause. I mean, I wish that there was a way. Of course, Watchtower deletes all of their shit, but I wish there was a way to track the amount of people that do commit suicide from this stuff, or at least, at the very least, have a degradation of life, because they're too depressed now to live the life that they wanted because of what Watchtower took from them. And I think, I really do believe that it is a thing with churches that as soon as you try and touch their money, that's when it is that they care the most. And I think the ones that do that should be watched the most by governments and by courts, because if you are there only to cause stress, and you're only there to make sure that things go your way all the time, you're not a loving church of any kind. You are another form of religion that has given way to tyranny, and that's all you'll probably ever be, because I've seen very few religions be able to pull themselves out of how deep of shit Watchtower is in right now. At least without having to completely rebrand themselves. where day one ended, the state teased up children's rights. Finally, the state turned to what it has described as an independent and decisive bias for denying subsidies children's rights, including protection from psychological violence and negative social control. Watchtower loves that social control, and that's another thing too. I cannot think of anything where a tyranny that obsesses over social control like Watchtower does can be anything but negative. Liv emphasized that Norway's human rights obligations do not stop at the at reframing from violations by state itself. In certain circumstances, those obligations require interventions in harmful private systems, including within religious communities, when established practices undermine convention protection. She also flagged what lies ahead for the court. There is no direct plug and play judgment from Strasbourg that define when pressure on the right to leave a religious community crosses the legal threshold. The task now falls to the Supreme Court, which must draw the line using border case laws on coercion, pressure, and freedom of association. I feel like that from me being having to be a kid that grew up in a Watchtower, the coercion and the pressure not to leave but to be baptized in all the good things that are going to happen to you when you get baptized, blah 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 blah. I feel like that should make every single child baptism where people ended up having a negative experience into a lawsuit for Watchtower, because it's all done from coercion and pressure. Whether you're leaving or you're someone that's trying to progress, the amount of coercion and pressure that one faces for baptism in Watchtower is ridiculous. At its core, today's hearing was not about theology, but about consequences. The state made it clear that religious freedom does not include the right to construct systems where leaving means losing one's family, social world, or sense of safety, particularly for children, when internal rules are enforced through isolation, stigma, and fear. They cease to be private beliefs and instead function as mechanisms of control. Absolutely. Live grounded this argument not only in the testimony of former Jehovah's Witnesses, but in the organization's own literature. Texts such as God is Love and the Elder's Handbook describes the explicit terms how members, including children, are to be treated when they are excluded or withdraw. Yes. The practices described are not incidental. They are taught, structured, and enforced. Yes, they are. On Friday, February 6th, the hearing continues. I'll go read that one next. Continuous Watchtower Defense Counsel. Oh boy. Presenting the organization's case, the Supreme Court is now asked to decide whether public funds can support a religious community whose own practice makes freedom of conscience conditional on personal loss, and whether the state has a duty to intervene when the costs are borne by the most vulnerable. Okay. And I feel like that it's a really good title. The price we pay, the price that every ex-Jehovah's Witness has had to pay in their life. And this is only in Norway. I hope soon it will be in other places, but this is only in Norway for right now. Well, I'm gonna end this here. Thanks for watching.